Okay, so I will present a series of work I did with Siddharth Gupta from University of Warwick, Adrian Kozowski from Navalgo, and Przemek Uznansky from Navalgo also. Adrian was formerly in my team and he created a startup called Navalgo, so if you want to look what they do. And I will speak about compact representation of a graph metric, let's say. And the focus will be on a special kind of distance labeling, for those who know what it is, called two-hop labeling. Okay. So the beginning of the story is a paper we had with Adrian at SODA 2017. So this is one of the things I will talk about, this skeleton tree thing. And this is also the story of meeting Victor, who had also a paper at the same conference about conjunction in a hyperbolic network with an amazing proof, in my sense, because for proving something on a finite graph, he would go to an infinite object, the injective hull. I'm not sure I remember correctly, but you will ask Victor if you want more details. But hyperbolic networks and distance labelings are two topics I share with Victor. And there has been a lot of talks about hyperbolic stuff, so let's have something about distance labelings. So what is a distance labeling? It's about encoding the distances of a graph. So we are given a graph, G, or call it gamma if you prefer, with n nodes and m edges. N will always be the number of nodes and m the number of edges. And the graph can be directed. Everything I will talk about is okay with directed graph. And you can think that you have lengths of edges. This you can also deal with it. Okay, and the problem is how to efficiently encode the distances of the graph. Imagine you are given the graph, you can make any computation you want, and then you have a series of queries that ask you what is the distance between U1 and V1, between U2 and V2, between V2, and you have to be very fast for the queries. For the pre-computation, you can take all the time you want, but for the queries, you have to be fast. So for those who don't know distance labelings or the idea of encoding the graph metric, let's begin with the notion of distance oracle. So a distance oracle is a data structure together with an encoder and a decoder. So you take a graph, you plug it through the encoder, and you get some representation that can allow you to answer queries. So the decoder is used for each query UV. The decoder will use that data structure plus the information about UV, and will answer you the distance between UV in the graph. And hopefully the data structure you use, the distance oracle, is not too big, and you answer queries very fast. Okay, so you hope to answer the query much faster than the time you need for scanning the graph, for example. And the distance labeling is a special kind of distance oracle where you split the distance oracle with a label for each node. So each node V has a label LV, and when you want to decode the distances, you just take the two labels LU and LV associated to U and V, and you can compute the distance from them. So it's kind of distributed version of distance oracle. And it appears that two-hop labelings are really the most basic way to construct distance labels. And the main idea in two-hop labeling is for each node to associate special nodes that I will call hubs. And these are the nodes by which you are going to access your node, if you want, like hubs in airports. And for each hub of a node, you are going to store the distances from the node to the hub. This is also known as hub labeling or landmark labeling. There are quite many papers on the subject. And imagine, so this has practical applications. Imagine you want to know what is the distance between A to B. You have pre-computed some hubs for A, and you know the distance from A to this hub. You have pre-computed some hubs for B, and you know the distance from B to the hubs, then you can look at if they have some common hubs, and for each common hub, you know an upper bound of the distance. And what I will ask for the hub sets is to have the property that they always have, for any pair of nodes, they always have a common hub on the shortest path. So if this blue thing is the shortest path, I will require that the two nodes have a common hub on the shortest path, so that the minimum of the value I get will be the exact distance. Okay, so if I put a blue, let's say, shortcut between a node and its hubs, then I get a graph with more edges, and I put the correct length to the shortcut so that the distances are the same. And now, for each pair of nodes, I have a shortest path of 2 hops. So this gives a name for 2-hop labeling. So formally, a collection of hub sets, HU, so each node U is associated with a set of nodes HU, is said to cover all pairs of the graph, or to cover the graph, if for each pair of node UV, there exists a common hub W on the shortest path from U to V. So, and again, you see this property we have often seen here, that the distance from UV must be equal to the distance from UW plus the distance WV. You can think of intervals, or that's a very natural property we have seen here. Okay, so if you want to construct the distance label, the label of U would be for each hub of U, the ID of the hub and the distance to the hub. And if you want to compute a distance query, then you take the two labels and you output this. And you just have to scan 2 arrays and to make the intersection. So this is very fast. This is indeed the fastest practical way to access distances of a graph. There is a faster one, which is to store the full adjacency matrix, but it is impractical because for big graphs, the adjacency matrix would be too big. So this idea of distance labeling and even 2-hop labeling was introduced in work by Gavwal et al. The 2-hop labeling, the problem of computing 2-hop labeling was formally introduced by Cohen et al. There is a nice line of work by Abraham et al. In applying this kind of ideas to road networks, and also to other practical networks by Akiba et al. And there are approximability results already in the work of Cohen, and you have some other references here. So as I said, equivalently, you could say that the covering property asks that for each pair of node UV, the intersection of the hubs of U, the hubs of V, and the interval UV is non-empty. And if you think of Sergio Cabello framework, you can note that V cross V, V cross product V, is covered by the inverse of upsets. So what I call the inverse of an upset, so the inverse HW is the set of nodes that have W as a hub. So there is a connection, and note that the union here is not disjoint. So let's begin with a very simple graph, a path. How do you construct hubs for a path? So a very basic idea is to take the node in the middle and ask everybody to take that node as a hub. So this will already cover many pairs, because for any node on the left, you can go to the middle node, and from the middle node, you can go to any node on the right. So you have already covered 1/4 of the pairs. I mean, 1/2 of the pairs. Okay, and then you can recurse on each half. You take each half, and you have to cover pairs on the left, cover pairs on the right. So again, you take a node in the middle, and add this node to all the left, or the right node to all the right. And you construct recursively upsets for each node, and the size of each upset will be something like log n. So you see it will be quite small, and the upsets will be quite small also. So you have upsets of size log n, and you can note that this idea works also for trees. If you have a tree, you just take a centroid and you do exactly the same thing. And if it works for trees, it works as well for bounded tree width graph. You take a separator of size 3 widths plus 1, which is a kind of centroid, and you recurse exactly the same way. And you will get upsets of size t log n, where t is the tree width. So this is a very basic idea and very powerful already. And the question I want to address in this talk, or try to partly address, is to have some ideas of what graphs do have small upsets. Because there is no hope for a dense graph, for example. If you have a dense graph, for each edge would be, for a dense graph where each edge is the shortest path, basically one of the two nodes has to take the other as a hub. So the sum of upset size would be at least m over 2. And if m is something like n squared, this would be too big. So there is no hope for dense graphs. But for planar graphs, for example, you can do upsets of size square root of n. And there is a lower bound. So if the graph is weighted, there is a matching lower bound of square root of n. And if the graph is unweighted, there is a interesting lower bound of n to the 1/3. Again, by Gavwal et al. These people have made a lot of work about distance labelings. So, part 1. Do sparse graphs have small upsets? This would be great. So sparse graphs, I mean graphs where the number of edges is linear, let's say, in the number of nodes. Or even constant degree. Can you find small upsets in constant degree? So the best known upper bound is n over log n. So you can do less than n. So the situation is slightly better than in dense graph. Of course, a trivial upset would be to take all the nodes. Everybody takes all nodes as hubs, then you get something very big. And in a sparse graph, you can do slightly better, n over log n. And again, the best lower bound is this square root of n that even holds on weighted planar graphs. And, but we could improve the lower bound here to something which is greater than some. So it's this bound n divided by 2 to the square root of log n. Note that this is this grows faster than n to the 1 minus epsilon. Okay, so there is no hope for a polynomial bound, even for sparse graph. So we spent a lot of time trying to do something. So when we came to this, we were kind of surprised that there was no hope. And interestingly, this result is related to some, don't read RQ, but RS number, which is a number connected to work on covering a graph with induced matching by Roussa and Semeredi. So we'll have a look at what is this RS of n. And the proof of the theorem is basically this graph. So this graph, I claim that you take this graph and there is no hope to find sublinear, significantly sublinear upsets for this graph. So what is this graph? So you have several copies of a lattice of dimension L. So 2L by 2L by 2L by 2L, L times. So each VI is a copy of this lattice, and each VI is an independent set. There is no edge inside VI. So there are some gray edges you may not see here, because I wanted to the figure to be kind of readable. And you can move from one VI to the next one by edges that move along a coordinate. So from V0 to V1, you can move along the first coordinate. So from any node of the lattice, you can go to the other lattice by moving on only one coordinate. And the length of the edge is the variation in the coordinate squared. Okay, so if you move by x, the length of the edge is x squared. And so if I want to go from 1, 0, so here L equal 2, because I cannot draw higher dimension, and already it was a bit hard. So if you look at the path from 1, 0 to 3, 2, here I have highlighted two paths, the blue and the red. And the blue has length 4, because here you have weight 1, weight 1, weight 1, weight 1. At each time you move just by 1. You go from 1, 0 to this is 2, 0. So this is 2, 0. Then we go to 2, 1. Then to 3, no, to 2, to 3, 1, and then to 3, 2. And in the red path, we don't move here, so the length is 0. Then we move by 2 on the second coordinate, so we go to 1, 2. So this has length 4. Then we don't move, and then we move by the other coordinate by 2, so this is length 4 again. So the red path has length 8, the blue path has length 4. And taking the sum, so if you look at how much you change on each coordinate and you sum all that, this is fixed because you just take the difference of the coordinates of the source and the destination. So the sum of variation of coordinates is fixed. And the length of the path is the sum of the square of the coordinate variation. This means that there is a unique shortest path. If the difference in coordinate is even, there is a unique shortest path, the path going through the middle node. You see that 2, 1 here is the middle of 1, 0, and 3, 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So you have to go, there is only one shortest path, and it goes through the middle node. So this means that when you take any pair of nodes in the bottom and in the top, one of them has to take a hub which is on the other side of this big stuff. So one of them has to pay one hub. And this hub will be useful only for covering this node, no other node. So this is the proof that the number of nodes you need is basically the size of this lower layer times the size of the upper layer. And there is this 2 to the square root of log n because the size of these layers is basically 2 to the square root of log n. Here we choose L such that L times L times L, so L to the L is approximately n. Okay, so 2 to the L to the L, that is 2 to the 2L equals n, so L equals square root of log n. Okay, that's a rough idea of the graph, and I think this graph is fun and can be useful in showing bad examples. Okay, now the link with Roussat-Semeridi. So Roussat-Semeridi, in a work that dates back from the 70s, looked at graphs you can construct by adding induced matchings. Or if you want that the edges can be covered by induced matching. What do I call an induced matching? It's a set of edges. And when you look at the graph induced by the ends of these edges, this forms a matching. So this blue thing is an induced matching. But if I try to add a blue edge, it is not induced anymore because of this black edge that is also induced. If you select the nodes at the end of the blue edges, you have also to select the black edge. Okay, so and Roussat and Semeridi were wondering if you could construct very dense graph that can be decomposed in induced matching. Okay, and what they show is you cannot do n square edges. You cannot go up to something proportional to n square. They show that there is a slight difference. There is a 2 to the log star n factor. So a very small factor, growing very slowly, but you cannot reach 2 to the square root of n. And their argument is to use the existence of a dense set of integers with no triples in arithmetic progression. And so this dates back to work by Berend, and who was improving previous work by Erdős and Turan. So my challenge was to cite the oldest paper of Erdős. I'm not sure I've succeeded. He was only 23 at that time. So you can define Rs of n as the largest integer such that there exist Rs graphs. So I call Rs graphs those graphs you can decompose as a union of induced matching with nodes and at least n squared over Rs of n edges. So if you want n squared over Rs of n is the maximum of edges you can put in a Rs graph. And these are the bounds we know on Rs of n. This dates back to Roussat and Semeridi. So you see the log star, it's a very low growing bound. And there is again something similar to what we've just seen, a 2 to the square root of log n upper bound. And the most recent work on this subject is by Elkin and Fox. So I'm going to show you the upper bound, the previous upper bound, using our graph. So you consider these matchings. So you take a node and you consider a pair of nodes, one node on the bottom layer and one node of the top layer. So 0 and 2L here is for bottom and top. And if there is, so you know this is a graph associated to Y. And you would put those pairs such that Y is the middle of X and Z. So all those pairs, you can see that they form a matching because of this unique shortest path property. And you also ask that the distance is fixed. And so all these graphs are matchings, induced matchings, and there exists a D such that the union over Y of this matching is big, and they have a lot of edges. It's a rough idea. I think I cannot go into the details without spending too much time. Something fun is that we can do the converse. If you have a good lower bound on Rs of n for a graph, if you know that your graph can be covered by few induced matchings, then you can compute subsets of n over this number to the 1 to the 7. So I won't explain this, but the idea is to, again, use this kind of graph gy and to use a vertex cover of this graph. So when you cover an edge of this graph by one node, it means this node will take Y as a hub. So using vertex cover, you can cover all pairs of the nodes, and you will get subsets with this bound. So there are connections in both directions. And it is also connected to a problem in communication complexity called sum index. I will just say what is the problem. You have a vector of bits, and both Alice and Bob know this vector. Alice knows an index A of the vector. Bob knows an index B. And they both have to send a message to a referee. And the referee has to output the value of the bit in position A plus B. So this gives the name sum index. You have to give me the bit in position A plus B. And again, you have similar bounds with 2 to the square root of log n on the size of the messages. And if you can improve, if you can find small distance labelings for this graph, then maybe you will get better message size for the problem before, because basically you can use your distance labeling to answer the bit. But I won't go into the details. Now the part 2 will be what about practical graphs? So it appears that two-hop labeling is very efficient in practice. I mentioned some works, and not only for road networks, they are the fastest one for a size which is quite reasonable, but they also work for many types of networks. So Akiba et al. Really tried to make on various graphs, like social graphs, on any type of big practical graphs you can find, and they could succeed in building hub sets and two-hop labelings for practical graphs. So there was a very nice paper by Abraham et al. Saying that if you succeed to do this in road networks, it's because road networks have small highway dimension. So this is a very nice work, but there is a slight problem, is that grids do have high highway dimension. If you take a grid, so I don't explain what is highway dimension, but just know that the highway dimension of a grid is square root of n. And the square root of n by square root of n grid has highway dimension square root of n. So this is a very nice work, but it doesn't work for grids, which is a quite natural model for road network in New York, for example. But we could kind of extend their work to also get small dimension for the grid. So just to give an intuition of what we call skeleton dimension, it is the maximum width of the skeleton of a shortest path tree. So if you can build shortest path trees for your graph such that when you remove the furthest away part of your tree, at any distance you have few branches. So maybe it's hard to explain, but it's easier to see, I think. So let's take a shortest path tree in the road network, and I took as root a node in Barcelona. And it's not only to please Sergio, but also because I gave the talk in Barcelona. The soda was there at that time. And so so of course when I draw the shortest path tree, so all paths from Barcelona to any node in Europe, I get a path everywhere, and this is all black. But what I'm going to do now is to keep only the two first thirds of each path. And that I get this red thing. So you see that if you look at distance, let's say half eccentricity of Barcelona, I have very few branches, like maybe something like less than 10. And if I zoom on the tree, you see that at any distance I don't have so many branches, maybe less than 20. So let's zoom again at this distance less than 20. Then at any scale, I have a few branches in this tree skeleton. This red thing, I call this the tree skeleton. And what is fun about this zooming is that you have seen 2/3 of the full shortest path tree routed at Barcelona. You have all the details of 2/3 of a shortest path tree, which is a very big thing. So more formally, the tree skeleton is defined like this. For each shortest path from you keep only the two first thirds. Okay, so this is the red part. And when you make the union of all shortest paths, so this is the shortest path tree, the black thing would be the shortest path tree routed at you, and the red thing will be the the union of 2/3 of a shortest path. This is what I call the skeleton tree of U. And if I look at the node at distance r, and here it would be very convenient to consider the graph as a continuous graph, that you have nodes inside edges. So if I look at nodes at distance r, I cut all branches, and the cut is the number of nodes at distance r. And the width of the skeleton tree is the maximum cut size of the tree skeleton. And the skeleton dimension is the maximum width of such a skeleton. Theorem. if the skeleton tree is k, then you can find subsets of size k log d. So it's a randomized construction, so it would be k log d on average, and it would be k log k log d with certainty, with high probability. So how do you do this? By random sampling. So here I have put in red the skeleton tree of U, in blue the skeleton tree of V, and you sample nodes at random. That is, you give to each node so note that these two skeletons must overlap by 1/3. If UV are at distance r, the overlap must be r/3. And so to each node W, I associate a random number between 0 and 1. And I will select as hub the node in the overlap with a minimum number. And the probability for a node in this interval to be the minimum one is r/3 is 1/r/3, because there are roughly r/3 nodes there, and the probability to be the one that wins is 1/r/3. So the probability to be selected is 1/r. So when I sum over all distances, I get a harmonic sum. This gives you the log factor. It's just an intuition again, but I don't want to go into the details. So here you see two tree skeletons. So interestingly, you see that you get several paths just using the skeletons. So this is for fun. I did this also for France. I love Spain, but I also love France. And so here you see the tree rooted at Brest and the tree rooted at Monaco. The skeletons only. Huh? And I selected these two nodes because these are the two nodes which are furthest away by the road network in France. So you see the diameter. The diameter of France is one of these paths you have connecting them. And just for fun, this is what is this Google Map? Yes. So you see that the Google Maps gives you have these skeleton trees. You have to. They are intrinsically here. And this is Bing's. So you see, you have again a similar picture. By the way, many of the work of Abraham et al. Has been implemented in Bing, so it's not surprising that you find this kind of stuff. So now what about grids? So let's take a practical grid, so Brooklyn. And the white thing here is a ball of radius 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I don't remember exactly. And the center, the node with the blue pin is the center of the ball, and the black thing on the right is the tree skeleton of that node. So you see that in the grid it's okay, except when you have this diagonal roads that can make many nodes. So here, if you look at the white ball, you want to count how many branches of the tree skeleton go through this are in the cut. Okay, so it's not so much, except at the top you see all these streets, these neighboring streets that cut it. But okay, so if you have diagonals in the grid, that's bad for tree skeleton. It's better Manhattan. Manhattan is really good. Yeah, on the left it was an example for showing that highway dimension must be bigger, but I won't explain this. So now if you have a regular grid, I'm not sure you can see the edges, vertical and horizontal edges, I'm sorry. And imagine you have many paths in a grid, and the skeleton dimension parameter is defined when you have unique shortest path, when you have decided what is the shortest path you want to use. So if you give a slight priority to or let's think that this is the main axis, the middle is the main axis, a main boulevard, same thing horizontally. If you give priority to this, and you do this, then you get skeleton trees that have a particular shape. And if you do this recursively, so in each quadrant you have the middle road as a slightly higher priority. So this is a way to make all your shortest paths unique. Then the skeleton dimension with this choice of shortest path will be log n. So the grid with proper choice of shortest path has small skeleton dimension. Something open is what is the skeleton dimension of a random grid. So on the left, I have the full square grid, and for each node, I have two choices for how to reach the node, the top left node that I want to reach. I can go either, so if I am in this quadrant, I can go either left and then reach the node, or top and reach the node. So for each node, I have two choices. So if I make one choice at random, I get this left tree. In the middle part, I slightly perturbate all lengths. So the length is taken as a random number between 1 and 4. So you get this tree. And on the right, I keep each edge with probability 2/3. So I remove some edges. And again, I get this skeleton tree. So for those who like to make some probability analysis, it would be interesting to analyze the asymptotic skeleton dimension of a square root of n by square root of n grid. Of course, this is related to first passage percolation, and there is a work I'll do that goes into that direction and notably connects to highway dimension, which is a related parameter. Yeah.
Did you check with the augmented grid of Canada that you mentioned?
I should not have asked this question to India. So I did not try, but I tried to think what would happen. Because the diameter of the augmented grid is small. If you put the right value for the probability of choosing the length of a link, the diameter of the augmented grid would be log square n. So I don't know if the hub sets are going small. No, you have to think. So 2 hubs are fun, but what about 3 hubs? It's a natural question, isn't it? Let's do 3 hubs for the path. So I want to add shortcuts so that between any pair of nodes, here I have a Larsen, I have to stay here, so that between any pairs of nodes, I have a shortest path of length 3. So I can reach any node with at most 3 shortcuts. So let's take square root of n kind of hubs. And what would be the idea is that already I can connect each node to the hub on the right and the hub on the left. Okay, so this is not too many links, only 2 links per node. That's good. And then what could be the idea is that when I want to go from a node to another, I go to the hub on the right side. Then I would like to go directly to the hub the other is connected to, and then to the other node. But if I want to be able to do this for all pairs from different intervals, I have to add all edges between the middle hubs. That's where you see that the choice of square root of n for this kind of hubs was good, because square root of n squared is also a linear number of edges. So the middle links would be there would be n over 2 of them, and the left and right links there would be 2n. So at most 3n shortcuts are added in this step. And now I have to recurse with a path of length square root of n. So what would be the number of recursion labels? Log n. Because square root of n, I have interval square root of n, then square root of n, square root of n, okay? So n to 1 over 2 to the number of iteration levels. So I get smaller size in some way. I have to add less shortcuts, log n versus log n with 2 hops. But can you do a distance oracle with this? Can you encode distances with the 3 hop sets? And the answer is yes. So for each node, there are 2 types of links. There are the middle edge of the 3 hop path, and there are the type 1 or 3 that are the edges that connect you to a kind of hub. So for each of these 1 or 3 type 1 or type 3 edges, you store the distance to these nodes. So each node is going to remember these edges it is connected to and will store the distances. Similarly to the labeling with 2 hop. And the middle links, you put them in a hash table. Okay, and in the hash table, you store the length of the middle shortcut. And when you have a query for distance from U to V, for each neighboring kind of hub of U, so for each neighbor of type 1 or 3 of U, for each such kind of neighboring by shortcuts of Y of V, you look at if the middle shortcut is in the hash table. And if so, you know that there is a path, a 3-hop path, whose length would be the sum of the 3 distance, and you take the minimum one, would be the exact distance if you have properly computed your 3-hop construction. I'm very evasive, but I just want you to get the idea, not the details. And note that these neighbors are in number log n. So you have log n squared pairs to test in the hash table. And you get a running time which is log n squared compared to log n with 2 hop sets. So this is a very surprising situation where you get, using similar IDs, a distance oracle which is not only smaller in size, but also faster in query time. That's something that is very unusual because often you have a trade-off. The smaller the distance oracle is, the higher the query time gets. But here we can, from 2 hops to 3 hops, we gain on both parameters. That's kind of surprising. And you can do this for the path, and again, obviously for the tree, for a bounded tree width graph. And we also could do this for skeleton dimension, bounded skeleton dimension. Okay, if you have a graph with a skeleton dimension k, so we need another assumption that the lengths of the edges are bounded by some L. And then we can construct 3-hop distance oracle with size n times k log k times some log n plus log L, so something that remains. If you just look at the n factor, so if everything is constant k and L, you get n log n size and log n squared query time. And the construction is a bit involved. I will not go into this. So is this the end of the story? So as I said, there are some open questions. So one is the skeleton dimension of the grid. Another question is whether you can construct these upsets in subquadratic time, because the construction I showed, you have to compute all shortest path trees of your graph. So this will typically require quadratic time for constructing this 2-hop hub labeling. And these 2-hop labelings, they have a nice property is that when you have 2 nodes, the common hub, so if the 2 nodes are at distance r, the common hub is at distance theta of r. It is at least r over 3 and at most 2r over 3. And it's a very nice property because if you have an estimation of the distance of your node, or if you are looking for nodes at a certain distance, then you can use this property of your upsets to narrow the search. So another open question, could you build practically upsets with this kind of property, that the common hub is in a distance which is proportional to the distance between the nodes you are connecting? So there is this huge question of improving lower bounds for distance oracle in general, because what I proved is only for two-hop labeling. So we have a lower bound for two-hop labeling. If we could connect our construction to some problem in communication complexity. So if you improve the lower bounds on distance labeling, then this would connect to something in communication complexity. Somehow we are connecting works and give some intuition about lower bounds on distance labelings, but this is all we got. For general distance oracles, the question is still quite open and probably quite difficult. And a naive question also that came to me while writing the slides is, what are the graphs with constant size upsets? What is this, or if you fix a upset size, what are the graphs where you can have small upsets? So is there any, so of course if you say log n's, it's not really easy to characterize them, but maybe constant size is something more easy. Okay, that's it. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Laurent. Are there any questions?
When you construct the skeleton, why do you cut at 2/3 and not just a bit more than half?
So you could cut, so it's a very natural and very good question. You could cut at anything which is constant, basically. And practically, you can go to a little bit more or even a little bit less. But you have to be at least 1/2, because you want the skeletons to overlap, and you want them to overlap by a constant fraction. So you have to be away 1/2. And if you take 1, then your skeleton is your tree. And you will have to take all the nodes as hubs. So you have to take something between 1/2 and 1. So 2/3 sounds like a natural choice. And another reason is that this allows to connect skeleton dimension to highway dimension. So highway dimension was introduced before. So by to honor highway dimension, we choose 2/3, which is the value that allow skeleton dimension to be always upper bounded by highway dimension. If you have highway dimension h, then you have skeleton dimension k.
Other question?
So, wait. You mentioned that you can apply this for bounded tree-width graph, and that it is working only for sparse graph.
Yeah.
I remember that Courcel and I think Twig did some distance labeling for bounded click-width graph, which are somehow dense graph. Capture some dense graphs.
Of course.
Can you adapt for this type of graph also?
I suspect that I don't know the construction of Courcel, but I suspect the construction is
it's similar
is probably a two-hop labeling. And if not, you can probably deduce one from it. There are not so many ways to build distance labelings, in fact. You basically have two-hop labeling and trees. There exist, we know what is the best thing to do with a tree. If you want to do distance labeling in a tree, we know what the best thing is to do, and you need log square n bits. And you can have constant size access. If you do the construction I said for the trees, you get log n hubs per node. So this is also log square n bits. So in terms of size, two-hop labeling is optimal for tree. but in terms of query time, there are ways to do better. And almost all the distance labelings, except those built by Victor, Arnaud, and Sébastien, and maybe some others work they did, you can usually use, they usually combine 2-hop labeling and tree labeling. You make combination of them. So if you are not so much worried about the query time, you could replace all what uses trees by 2-hop labeling. So it's kind of very, it's everywhere. This idea is everywhere in distance labeling.
Just a precision. In your result, you assume that shortest paths are unique, yeah?
For the skeleton dimension, you don't really need to assume that. What you need is a collection of shortest path tree that agree. What I mean by agree is that if you take two nodes and U and V and their shortest path tree, the branch of U that contain V must agree on the shortest path with the branch of V that contain U. So if you have this collection of shortest path tree, then you can define the skeleton dimension similarly and make everything work.
If you don't assume that they are unique, then one question whether this VC dimension, Vapnik-Chervoninski's dimension for intervals can be helped.
I didn't get the question.
You investigated Vapnik-Chervoninski's dimension for ball hypergraph, but also you can have the interval hypergraph. And if this dimension is small, you have small hitting sets for big intervals.
You could work with the intervals. That's perfectly right. And what you need is, but how do you count the cuts? Then it's not so.
For each
Yeah,
topic,
it's
you take
a
a sample. You hit all intervals defined by this vertex, and simply you.
That's a more general way to attack this. That's.
But you need that for each pair of vertices you have a common curve. Maybe not only a epsilon net, but more.
Yeah, but yeah, there is also the idea that with one hub you hit many intervals.
Yeah. You
So,
need this, but also for each interval you need the common. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I have a very short question. What about social network like Barabasi, Albert graphs or something about the skeleton dimension? Do you know anything about that?
I think it's bad because, so first of all, skeleton dimension is lower bounded by degree. Okay, you have to take all your neighbors. If you look at the ball of radius 1/2, you have the cut is the number of neighbors. So skeleton dimension is at least degree. So any graph where so you could still do 2-hop labeling with graph with big degrees, because if there is a node of big degree, then the neighbors will take the node as hub, and this node will still take few hubs. So it's still possible to manage large degree nodes. So in practice, Akiba could construct a small 2-hop labeling for this kind of graphs. But the skeleton dimension, I think, will be big, because you have big degree nodes. And also the distances are quite short, so probably some cuts are big.
Thank you again, Laurent.